Sweet.
Propaganda.
Yeah. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Creative Office Podcast. This is episode 11. I almost forgot what episode it was. This is so cool that we're 11 episodes in. Once again, thank you all for the... Let me adjust this real quick. There we go. Thank you all for the continuous support and love. Just don't forget to keep sharing it. Send it to your friends. Send it to your family members. We just want to share our stories. We want to share what we do here. And today I have a Motion Church legend, I would say. He probably won't agree, but I have Kyle Naron with me today on the pod.
Hey, guys.
Kyle is, if you recognize the Naron last name, Kyle is Dave and Renee's son. So he is Mr. Puyallup Jr. Just kidding. No, but Kyle has been at the church for a while, and he's on staff currently, and in the last year and a half, I've got to know him really well, and it wasn't like that at first. No, Kyle and I have talked about, I totally thought Kyle was a jerk when I first met him, and he had this LA swagger that I was not familiar with.
I'm not the most approachable human all the time.
No, I agree, but once you kind of get into Kyle's circle, you're in, which is kind of cool. I consider that like a pretty big win. Know that I'm pretty close friends with Kyle, so it's pretty cool. But yeah, bro, thanks for being here.
Of course.
We went to Olympia Coffee. Shout out Olympia, I think.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Are we allowed to shout out Olympia Coffee?
If you want to.
I'm just kidding. I'm not a big coffee guy, but Kyle was like, let's get coffee and then we'll come back and record. And I said, all right, sounds good to me.
Coffee first.
Coffee first. But yeah, Kyle, I just want to ask you if you want to share a little bit about who you are, where you come from.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Again, my name's Kyle. Happy to be here. I'm stoked. Always love hopping on, having a conversation.
Yeah.
It's the best.
Good. It's chill.
Yeah. I guess I don't know where to start. It
was 1989.
I'm born and raised like a pastor's kid. My parents were youth pastors. I think it was before I was born. Either before I was born or like right after I was born in Northern California. And
so you weren't born here, or you were?
I was. So okay. I think it was right after I was born. My parents were youth pastors. And my parents were out of ministry for a very long time. And they were business owners, small business owners, and grew up in the church. Was always involved, always going to church on Sundays.
Yeah.
Then I came to Motion Church, Puyallup Foursquare at the time, when I was, I believe, like 7th or 8th grade. How old is that? Like 12?
Yeah, like
13?
About maybe, yeah.
And I was kind of going to the junior high ministry. I mean, you know how it is, like when you're younger and going to like church multiple times.
You don't really want to. And
you're like, oh man, I went Sunday morning. I have to go again.
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
Yeah. And my mom's bribing me. Like, oh, we can get you candy on the way there. Like all that kind of stuff. Just to get me to go.
Get you coffee. Yeah. That's where it started.
Just to get me to go. And Phil, our young adult pastor and our overseer of Motion Interns now, was the junior high pastor when I was involved. Then was kind of in and out of the junior high ministry, which would go sometimes. Then when I was in high school, I met my friend Tessa. She was a senior when I was a freshman, and she was really, really involved in the high school ministry. And she kind of pulled me in and got me involved. And I met the youth pastor at the time, obviously Chad Veach, who's the best. And
what's his church called? Zoe
Church.
Yeah.
And was just going, just kind of hanging out. Was super timid and quiet, and was just making friends. Because going into not a new church relatively, but when you're not used to being in a certain community, and you're not really planted or involved outside of that, it's super intimidating.
Totally.
And it's kind of really hard to like get that confidence to kind of like insert yourself in there. So I started going consistently. Then Chad transitioned out to leave to LA to go plant his church. Then Nate Doomlau came in, and basically he pulled me aside, and he had this thing called TFL, And it was like his way of getting a bunch of guys to like set up for service. But he like made it this like cool, like small group where he would just pour into us. And there's a group of guys like Spencer Nakamura was a part of it. And yeah, there's just a bunch of group of guys that were involved in. So I started getting into that, and that's when I really got plugged in and really started making friends and serving. And that from that point on, it was just kind of like a snowball effect, just downhill, and couldn't get out. And it was the best. And all throughout high school, I was super involved in serving and going to the high school service, and being involved in Sunday mornings. Because at the time we did J-High Sunday mornings in the gym.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, I've heard about that.
That's when Josh Minton was kind of doing junior high.
Yeah. Before
he went to young adults, and we would have it obviously Sunday mornings, then Sunday nights as well. But it was a blast. Then once I graduated, I got a football scholarship to Southeastern University.
Yeah.
And went down there. Hated it. I loved the school. I hated football. Yeah. It's your life.
Like the difference between high school and college ball was very different, or it was
I mean, it's like, okay, think of your school load, like as a freshman, okay, like I'm 18, moving across the country, not knowing anybody.
Yeah.
Then it's okay, like throwing yourself into full-time school. Then like on top of that, it's another 45 hours a week of like football. I mean, like, okay, we had Mondays off, or we had Sundays off. No, I'm lying. We had Mondays off. Then Tuesday morning we'd have meetings at like 6 a.m., 6:30 a.m.
Wow.
And we'd go into a workout of some form or kind. It kind of varied on kind of your role within the team and how much you were playing and all that kind of stuff. Then we had practice that afternoon. Then you have a study hall after that. No matter how good your GPA and your grades were as a freshman, you had to be at every study hall.
That kind of sucks.
Yep. Then Wednesday was the same thing. 6:30 a.m. meeting, workout, school, classes throughout your day. Then you have practice, study hall. Thursday mornings we had practice at 4:30 a.m.
What?
Then we had a workout after that, and we have our classes.
What would you do at 4:30?
Practice.
Like outside?
Yes.
At 4:30 in the morning?
Yes.
What the heck?
Yes.
What?
Then Friday morning we had a 5 a.m. walkthrough. Then we had kind of the rest of the day off. Some of us would have position meetings, stuff like that. Then Saturdays were game days, so that's that's a full day.
Sure.
Of what, depending if we're traveling or it's at home or whatever. Then Sundays we'd have most of the day off to go to church, enjoy your morning.
Was that like required as not only as students but like on the team? Were you required to go to church?
I mean,
or a certain chapel or something?
As students, we have to basically accumulate chapel credits.
Oh, okay.
So basically every chapel you go to is a certain amount of credits. And basically I don't know if it's different now, but you would at least have to go to like 2 chapels a week.
Okay.
Basically to kind of meet your
like
quota,
the standard or whatever.
Essentially by the semester. So we go to church, then Sunday night, evening, we would have conditioning, film, then a workout, then we'd be done. And then then you have your classes, obviously, then your schoolwork, then it's like,
and you weren't
nuts.
You weren't even working, right? Most people weren't working.
No, I was broke.
That's crazy. And you did that for how long? A year?
I finished the season and dipped. I was out of there. I finished strong, saw it through. Then I was like, finished out my classes that semester, then transferred to Ministry Institute.
Okay,
at the time, now it's Motion Interns.
Yep.
Because it's the same thing. I mean, as far as schooling, it's just you're just moving online.
Yeah.
It's cheaper.
And you weren't
shout out Motion Interns.
And you weren't doing football.
No, I was coaching.
Yeah, with your dad, right? Cool.
Yeah, at Rogers High School, and Jake Archer.
At the same time?
Yep.
I didn't know that. I thought it was different times. Okay.
Yep. We were 0-9.
So
clearly good coaches.
So it was you and Jake
and my dad.
Oh, and your dad?
Yeah.
And you guys were 0-9?
Yeah.
Nice.
It's not a reflection of us, I promise.
No. I was just I imagine your dad was like head coach of like the winning team, and you and Jake were like a JV kind of a thing. No.
Yeah.
That's cool though.
Then I did 4 years technically. So I came in halfway through like that year.
So your
So that was my
credits
first year.
were still the same.
Yeah,
right?
so I was a first year intern. Then I did my second year, a full third year. Then I did half my fourth year because I graduated early.
Okay.
Then was on staff shortly after that as kind of like the operations admin at South Hill campus. And that was for about like 2 years.
Yeah.
Then I was here for a little bit during COVID. I'd say like the first kind of like four.
So you were here you were still here when it all went down?
4 or 5 months of like COVID. Then I moved to Los Angeles.
So what was that transition like? No, because it's kind of weird. You kind of already knew things were shutting down, right? When you moved to LA? Or
yeah,
was,
so
was
that
it,
was kind of.
Was it not as bad?
Because we were here. I was here through most of like the crazy shutdown stuff.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And like when everything was closed, like you go outside and
You were still here.
I was still here.
Yeah.
So Roger decided to make the call because he was like, no one really knows what this is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like nobody knew what was going on.
It was like February, March of 2020.
Yeah.
No one knew what the heck was going on.
So basically like the church was like not operational as far as like having people in the building for like 3 months. Then Roger's like, okay, like,
nope,
this is dumb.
Yeah, totally.
This is so dumb. And we had opened back up, and I was here, I think, through that summer. Then I left in early fall.
Okay.
Moved to LA, yeah.
So just as a recap, Kyle has always just been really involved. Like you've always just been involved in the church, right?
I'm here.
I feel like for me, it's really hard to just disconnect from that.
Sure.
Like as somebody I grew up in churches my whole life. So what was the reason, you don't have to get into details,
Sure.
but what was like I want to move to LA after having because I mean, I'm not being judgy. I'm just saying like if you were able to serve here and everything, what was just the motive to want to move to LA in the middle of COVID?
Yeah. I think for me, because when I moved, I forget how old I was. I think I was like 23. 22, 23. I think for me, I loved working at the church and being involved in ministry vocationally, but I didn't love my role. And I think for me at the time, like I just kind of got this. 2020 was a weird time for everybody.
Everyone. Yep.
Like you didn't know what to believe. Like you hear so many
You're questioning things in your life.
No one's ever been more opinionated holistically in the world. Like everybody. So you're in this like space where you're hearing all this stuff from different perspective, different views, and all this kind of stuff. And I just really got this like super critical lens of just what I was doing, and I started viewing everything super critically, and I had a crazy bad attitude about everything.
Yeah.
And I think for me, like, that wasn't like the push for me to move necessarily. Cause I think for me, I really wanted to move long time. When I was an intern, like I always wanted to go to Los Angeles and do that. And I think what really helped solidify my decision was I had people I knew that were involved in my life that were down there. So I wasn't going in completely blindly with community.
Yeah.
I moved with my best friend. And I think too, like right before COVID, I launched a clothing brand, and it's more of like a kind of a creative outlet for me.
Yeah.
And I really want to like learn and kind of push into that, like learn that industry. I didn't move to like blow up and get rich or become super famous.
Yeah.
Because that's stupid. But like I really wanted to just kind of like switch it up and get out of the bubble.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that greatly benefits anybody.
Sure.
Because I feel like when you're in such an insulated community like here, there's so many pros to it, but there's so many cons as well.
Yeah.
And I think like I would encourage anybody. I'm not saying like leave the church. Don't get me wrong. But it's like,
don't quote him.
Yeah, don't quote me. But I think it's nice to get a different worldview and a holistic worldview, because I think it only strengthens what you believe even more. I think spiritually, politically, like just values, morals. Like I think, so that was kind of like the push. I needed to get out, honestly. And I needed a kind of a break from where I've grown up, because I was in Florida for 6 months and I hated it the whole time. Like I just like couldn't wait to get back.
Yeah.
Even though I made like lifelong friends,
Uh-huh.
I had nothing, like I loved my alma mater.
Okay.
So like it wasn't like that, but it was like the football in the state. I didn't really count it. It was an experience for sure.
Sure.
And I learned a lot about myself. But after kind of being here for like 4 or 5 years, I was like realized I need to get out.
Yeah.
And I think that was like the push.
Sure.
And like going back to like that, having that critical perspective, I think that just kind of edged me out the door. And like I didn't leave like burning down in flames. Like I left as well as possible.
Sure.
Because how you leave one place is how you start the next. So it's like that was one thing I was really intentional about, was leaving so well.
Yeah.
So that kind of like, that answers a long-winded question. Like, pushed me into like, okay, like I'm ready to make this move.
Yeah.
After saving for 2 years.
Yeah.
And
so this is where we'll start getting into the whole creative thing.
Sure.
Right. So like you said, you started a clothing brand or what do you call it? A clothing brand? Yeah, it's a clothing brand.
Yeah. And I'd say it's like creative.
Like you said, of like creative outlet.
Yeah.
It allows you to design stuff. And for those who don't know, Kyle designed our logo. I was just like, hey, I want to start a podcast sort of thing, and would you be down to help? And this is the funny thing about Kyle. Once he gets the ball rolling, you just have to get it done. Because I remember you were texting me at like 1 a.m. like,
yeah, bro.
What do you think of this?
Well, when it's flowing, bro, you just gotta like
you gotta let it flow.
You can't cut it off.
Yeah, and I think that ties into everything and all things creative, right?
Yeah.
So because I didn't want this podcast just to be like a worship production thing, because designing clothes, designing graphics, designing, video editing and all these things, camera, photography, like all it ties into the creative world, right? And so what I wanted to kind of elaborate on is the fact that you needed to leave a place that you were just so familiar with.
Sure.
In order to get inspired for more. And I think there's just so many places in the States where, okay, you go to LA, there's this influence, right? You go to Nashville, there's the musical influence. You go to New York and there's like the fashion influence or whatever, if you want to call it that. So there's just so different places in the States where you can leave. And I think that's where you were like, with the encouragement, and I think that's where your mindset was with it's like not saying don't leave, but if there's an opportunity to be able to, like, I always was the kind of person who, like, if I had the opportunity to move to a place where I could do like engineering and all these things, like half of my heart was split with I want to do it because I want to learn sound and I want to learn all these things. But then another half of me is like, I'm such a family guy, like a family person, that it's just hard for me.
Sure.
Like, it's not something that I could just be like, okay, I'm going to move halfway across the country or all the way across the country and just do. I would have to think really, really hard. You know? But, yeah, I mean, this is not something that everybody has to do. There's just still taking a break from things. And this is where I encourage, like, people who serve on my team. It's if you're going through something, because people are like, oh, I want to serve to get distracted, or I want to serve to not think about this and think about that. It's like, well, you're not creating a healthy environment for anybody.
Sure.
If you're using that as like an outlet to get rid of your negativity instead of an outlet to inspire your creativity, right?
Right.
And so I'm like, take a break, sit down, sit in, I'll figure it out.
Yeah. Kind
of a thing. And so it just makes me think of you. You were just not in a position that you wanted to be in life. And it's just during COVID, it was such a crazy time to move though. But which is why I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah.
But it at the time, it probably seemed like the best thing to do because the world was paused. Like world just took a
ironic.
Halt. No, totally ironic. But it's like, okay, if I'm going to move, I might as well do it now when nothing is really happening, nothing drastic. You know what I mean? Like all your cards were on the table, but you weren't exposing much. Like you were just like, okay, this is what I want to do. And, especially now it's weird. I think we all live such busy lives where we just need to take a step back and like, okay, I need to reflect and where can I be better in certain areas. But To talk about what you did, what was like the LA life like, or what was inspiration being down there?
LA is probably by far my favorite city.
Yeah.
Big city. Because I think it's just like this huge, like any big city, but I think it's just this crazy melting pot of culture, ethnicity, beliefs, politically and spiritually. And I think creativity too. I mean,
Totally.
like you name it, like LA offers it.
Yeah.
Good and bad. Like, and I think like moving there, I had no idea. I mean, like, obviously I'm not gonna have any idea what I'm doing. I'm just kind of like on my own really for the first time. And I think just kind of like I first got there and I feel like this is like a LA rite of passage. Like you work a job you don't get paid for.
What'd you do?
This, I'm not going to name names, but this girl basically hooked me up with a job, a friend, and it's not her fault. She's like, oh, I have a mutual friend that kind of is in like the fashion production space. So basically she has her like contacts, and she basically takes in clients, whoever wants to do like merch, small businesses, music artists, small brands, whatever. And they'll go to her and say, hey, we want to make this. And basically she does all the execution. So she uses her contacts within the industry as far as like embroiderers, screen printers,
designers,
factories, etc. So it's basically like I was going to work for her, taking on accounts and basically leading that process for smaller accounts. And basically got there, had an interview process, all this kind of stuff before I moved. And moved there, I was like, great, I have a job.
So were you already designing stuff, or is this before you got into that?
This was, I really wasn't like, fashion production isn't really where you're designing.
Okay.
In layman's terms, it's basically like you're overseeing the process of like the product getting made. So people are bringing you almost like a finished project, a finished product of conceptualizing it and like, okay, like here's the design, here's what we want. Execute it.
Okay.
So basically, like I'm the one taking their vision and bringing it to life, which is cool. And so I'm working with the screen printers. I'm working with the embroiderers, the factories, the finishing houses, all these places to get the product made. And I get there and I'm like, haven't even met her yet. I've talked to her over Zoom. And all this kind of stuff. Zoom. And I started talking with the client, doing all this kind of stuff, like next steps. And this is like my first ever experience formally, like in the industry. And like nothing ever came from it. I worked like 3 weeks and I just like stopped because I'm like, okay, you're not answering my text, you're not answering my phone.
No
like
way.
It's like not like she's like ghosting me. It was just kind of like in and out, like communication. And it's like I'm just like I really don't know like what I need some like guidance. And I was like, okay, I'm like leaving, and I just found another job, and then never got paid for it.
And they never called you?
Nope.
They were just like, all right.
No, but it's like I feel like that's an LA rite of passage. Like when you first move there, it's like, okay, you work a job
scammed.
you don't get. Yeah, you don't
get scammed.
You work a job you don't get paid for. Then I worked at a coffee shop called Blue Bottle for like 4 months.
Nice.
And that was whatever, just serving snobbish foreign people that are tourists in Beverly Hills. Their macchiatos and stuff
Their
like
cortados.
that. Yeah. It's so annoying. They're cold brew.
So were you already kind of in that, like, when you moved to LA with your best friend, already in mind of what you wanted to do? Like, were you already designing stuff before, like here at home or? Yeah.
So, I mean, before we moved, we kind of had a lot of momentum with the brand. Like it was pretty cool because I think it was like March of 2020, we put out a hoodie. I think we moved like 30 units of a hoodie for our first drop. Which is super like encouraging. Then
units is like each like an item.
It's like 30 hoodies. We moved like 30 to 40 hoodies, I think. And after that, we worked on our kind of next collection, I guess. And it was all like, it was 3 different colored t-shirts, and they were all naturally dyed.
Okay.
So we basically used like avocado skins and pits.
Oh, you guys were dyeing these?
Yeah. We were dyeing them in the South Hill campus kitchen. There's like these huge blue like vats where it's like just things where you pour to boil a bunch of boiling water in it and threw the avocado skins and pits in there, let it sit, and it like dyes it pink, which is sick.
Oh, what?
Then we used like turmeric, which is like a yellow.
Yeah.
Then we used indigo and turmeric mixed, and it made a green.
Wow.
So we did that. Then we like the totes, hats, and we did a pop up on 6th Ave in Tacoma, and like sold out, which was sick,
bro. But this is like a leap of faith, right? Because you're spending money.
Oh, it's all my own money. It's all my own money.
Yeah. You're spending money that you don't even know if you're gonna get back.
Yeah.
Buying shirts, buying tote bags, all this stuff, right? Yeah.
And stuff was way less expensive than
I'm
it is
sure.
now. It's stupid.
I'm sure.
But yes, we did that. Then, well, we put out a couple more things after that.
Yeah.
Then we moved. Then basically, like, it's kind of crazy. Like, there's so much. When I moved to LA, it's so hard to live there. Like, so difficult.
Yeah?
So difficult. Like, there's so many, like, benefits to living there. It's like sunny and 75 degrees every day. Like
they're pretty, right? That's all cool.
There's so much things to do. Like I would say like your overall well-being when it comes to certain areas. Like right now, this time of year is like the worst. Really? Like in Washington. Sorry.
Oh.
Because it's like the weather, like it's depressing, seasonal depression, like all that kind of stuff. Like that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about like you wake up and it's sunny and you're ready to go. You feel great. You have the beach, you have the desert, you have all this thing, you have all this stuff to do. You name it, you could probably go do it.
Yeah.
And which makes it super fun. There's always this culture of like events, free concerts, like art galleries, pop-ups, like so there's always stuff to do, which like was awesome, but like my creativity was like I've never had a harder time creating in Los Angeles than
what?
I promise you. Like there's so much things that are inspiring there. Don't get me wrong. But I think like you get so worried about your day to day of like, how am I going to eat? How am I going to pay for this? How am I going to pay for that?
Yeah.
How am I going to pay my rent so I have a roof to sleep under?
Yeah.
So I think like you don't have that luxury of, I think, creating from like free space in your mind, because your mind is being pulled in. Your brain's in a blender.
You're worried about other stuff.
Your brain's in an absolute blender for like 24 hours a day, because it's like you're in traffic all the time. And like people are like, gosh, I don't want to move to LA because it's like the best city and I had so much fun and I don't regret ever moving there.
Yeah. And this is still when stuff were barely opening up, right? Or is this like everything in LA is open?
Yeah, but I'm like, when I got there, I'm like, I'm still getting my feet wet. Like I'm still trying to figure this thing called life out, you know? And
totally.
I think like that in and of itself can be really inspiring and you can create a lot from that, I think. But too, it's just like, as more time progressed, like I'm so worried about getting a job, trying to get in the industry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Trying to learn. And like, I'm just like living paycheck to paycheck, trying to make stuff work and have a social life and like, you know, just like normal human being things.
Yeah.
And I think like your brain gets so clogged with that, like that form of like stress and responsibility, where you're just kind of like, it's hard when you've never had to process and deal with that. Like it's hard to create space in your mind and in your life to create.
Yeah.
And even like you feel at a deficit when you're creating, because like you feel like I should be working right now. I should be grinding. I should be finding ways to make money.
Yeah.
So it's like,
that's crazy, because I would think that moving to a place that has so much culture and diversity and art and music and all these things, it would be so easy to get inspired. But it makes total sense. Like you're just trying to make ends meet.
when gas is $7 a gallon, you're like, I shouldn't probably drive tonight.
Yeah, take a scooter or something like and it totally makes sense. But I just think it's crazy how when you're so involved in an environment that just pours out so much, you struggle so much.
Yeah.
And the way I want to tie this into what we do here is don't take it for granted. I'm just kidding. No. But just find like the things in the, because I've struggled with the same thing. Like I used to be super fluent and I used to be super active with music production. Like I was making demos. Sure. I was tracking for people. And then I feel like that was during the beginning of COVID.
Yeah.
And then life started back up again. And then I just lost sight of that stuff. Like I haven't done much. I've started recently because it's kind of job related, but I just lost a lot of that insight. Like I lost a lot of creativity.
Sure.
That I feel like it's slowly starting to come back to me. But I always struggled with the mindset of there's just so much out there. Like there's so much music. There are so many arrangements. There are so many this and that I felt myself in a position where I had these things, but I was being very like judgmental of them. Like, what if it's not up to standard? Or what if, I was always like, oh, but this person's doing it better than me, so why should I even try?
Sure.
Versus with you, it was like you want to, but you can't.
Right.
Because you have to do other stuff.
Right.
It's like the creativity wasn't able to flow because...
I feel like it's not that I felt like I couldn't or that I could or couldn't. It's like I just felt that like I just didn't have the space. I didn't have the capacity. Like I'm sure like I could have in hindsight, you know what I mean? Like
okay.
But I think like when you're in the moment, like dude, I'm like, okay, how am I gonna pay for this? Like I got to do this.
Were you splitting rent with your buddy? Mm-hmm. Okay, so it helped, right?
Yeah, sure. But it's just like when you feel like you don't have that capacity to create. Because I mean, like when you're anything that you create there's a level of intimacy to it.
Yeah.
Because it's a piece of you, and I think it comes. I think it's spiritual. Like creativity is spiritual. Okay. 100%.
Yeah. Yep.
And obviously too, I think it's a piece of you that you're putting into something. And I think like when you feel like you can't give that spiritually and like you don't have the capacity to give that from yourself into the thing that you're creating.
Yeah.
Like if I just feel like I couldn't do that. Like I didn't have the capacity, I think spiritually and, I think just intimately with myself to invest in something like that at that time because I'm just being pulled in 5 million different directions with life.
That just makes it that much harder. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I understand. I mean, life gets in the way, and I'm going to speak for people here at home and for myself. I feel like sometimes we just feel like we need to do all these things and just get it done.
Yeah.
We're just going on in the fast lane.
Totally.
It's like, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do this. And then we wear ourselves out.
Yeah.
And it's not the same thing as what you went through, but the way I relate to it now is just now in life, I just feel like everyone is just moving so fast. There's no time to stop and smell the flowers, It's just go now.
Yeah.
So that's where, I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to be in a community, in a church, in a work environment where if I need to, it's like, I don't like saying mental health. It makes me feel weak.
Why?
I don't know. This is going to sound really weird and it might sound bad to some people, but growing up Hispanic, all that stuff was just seen so negatively upon.
Sure.
Like if I ever told my dad, like, Dad, I'm feeling depressed, he'd probably like slap my head and tell me to get to work or something. Like he'd be like, go work more hours. But it's not because he doesn't love me. It's just, it's that mindset and that culture. It's like, okay, well, if you're feeling sad and depressed or what, go do something else,
fill the void with something else.
Yeah. And so that's just how I grew up. And so I don't like saying mental health because of that, but I guess it does come down to it where you just have to find the balance. And because the 6-piece thing is in front of me, and so I was just looking at just keeping that passion, keeping the passion for what you love, for what you like doing.
Yeah.
But still managing your priorities really well. And so when we did these, because we did the first 6 episodes, we did, one of each. And if you haven't listened to, I encourage that you go back and listen to them. And they just all tie into each other. So it's really cool how, when there's purity, you have more passion to do something, and then you're positive about it, and there's that joy, and then you're constantly moving forward with progression, and then your priorities, and then you just have a good time, right? It all adds. So I think with creativity, as creatives, it's just a matter of not letting that fire kind of dim, that flame dim.
I think too, it's like creativity is a muscle.
Yeah.
It's like you constantly have to keep practicing.
You got to work at it.
Because I really don't believe like, because I feel like there's a very huge misconception with like creativity, and people like feel like they have to be born creative, which I don't agree with.
But I also feel like some people just don't have it. Or would you disagree with that?
I disagree.
Really?
I think everyone's inherently creative.
With something.
Yeah, with something. It doesn't have to be in the traditional sense of what people think creative is.
Yeah.
And I think some people are born with advantages for sure. Like if my parents are hypothetically like Elon Musk or like a crazy designer or artist, like obviously you have significant advantages.
Like if your dad was Kanye.
Yeah, bro, he's going off the deep end, unfortunately.
He is, yeah. Anyways.
But if I really believe like everyone is creative, like it's a muscle you work, and it's a skill set. Like not all skill set, like you have to work at all skill sets to develop them and build them.
Yeah.
And it's just like creativity. It's like with me designing, like I can barely use Illustrator like a year and 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Like I knew the basics, but it's like a skill set you develop over time. Like just like music, like, you know what I mean? It's like, if I want to learn how to play the piano, like I'm not going to start with like Mozart.
No.
Like I'm going to like sit down, watch a couple YouTube videos, learn how to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and I'm going to practice it, and I'm going to practice it. Then I'm going to graduate to
you'll progress to something else.
Merry Christmas or whatever a song
Mary
is.
Had a Little Lamb.
Yeah, then I'm going to play that until my fingers bleed, until I get good at it.
Yeah.
Then on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So it's a skill set you develop. And I mean, just like anything creative, whether that's like your taste, your palate, your ability to use certain softwares, learning how to sew, like it's all a skill set you learn and you develop, and it's like a muscle you work. So it's like when I don't do something creative in some form or another, like for a period of time, like it takes me a little bit more to get back in that groove.
Yeah.
So just like if you have something specific, like work on it.
Yeah.
And continually find time to like, whether it's 15 minutes to like, practice something, create something.
Sure.
Yeah.
This reminds me of because I feel like when you're just you're in the zone, like you're inspired, you're into it. When you don't have it, or when you don't make time for it, it affects all aspects of your life.
Right.
And it just reminds me of like seeking God's presence, seeking His Word. It's like if you're not constantly seeking the Lord, being in intimacy and communion with Him and seeking, it's like you can go 5 straight days reading your Bible, but then on day 6 you're like, I'm going to take a break. Something is still missing, and that ties into the creativity of things, And this is me speaking to me.
Totally.
I'm not trying to talk about anybody else. This is like, I know what I need to do. I just need to do it.
Sure.
Like I know that I need to kind of dust off my desk that I have at home and just start doing little stuff, and then that'll progress. That's kind of like the vision that I had with this. I know myself, so if I start off slow and I start off like, oh, I'll try, or next week I won't gain traction. So that's why with this podcast, it's one of those things where I'm really grateful that I'm able to do so much, and that we're 11 episodes in, because probably a year ago or Pablo 2 years ago would have quit at like the 4th one. I would have been like, I don't have any motivation to do this. But then I when I reflect on it, it's like, it's not about me. It's about, the people in our community. Like somebody's going to listen to this and be inspired by what you're saying, And so I'm just creating this kind of like a creative outlet, right? To just allow people to speak and to come on here. And a lot of it, I spoke with Spencer because I asked him about like with his podcast, and it's just having discipline and consistency with anything creative, because it can be draining, and it's very discouraging when you do something and I remember you and I were talking one night, and you were like, "I just can't. Like, I can't design anymore." I think it was a night you were just totally brain dead.
Yeah.
You remember? I don't know if we were designing this or it was something for United Night or for conference, and you just couldn't come up with anything, and you're like, "Oh, I'll continue tomorrow."
Mm-hmm.
Like, you hit your point where you were just like, "I can't anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna sleep on it and then wake up and just start again.
Yeah.
Start fresh." And that's how a lot of us can. Just let it be a reminder, for our friends who are listening.
Sure.
Just take a deep breath and just
Also,
start again.
like what you said, like about the spiritual portion of it.
Yeah.
Because I think it's like our creativity with anything, I think is directly tied to like what we serve our spirit with, for sure.
Oh, yes.
And I remember I was writing this down. I don't remember like when. I just remember I just felt like led to like sit down and kind of write this stuff out about creativity and kind of like encouraging people that like everyone is a creator.
Yeah.
In a sense, no matter what it is. And one of the things I wrote, it says, this is like point 3, it says, deepening your connection with God will serve your spirit. What we serve our spirit invariably serves our artistic output. The closer the relationship we develop with Christ, the sooner we realize we are not separate. In that we create, we are not just expressing our unique individuality, but our connection to Christ.
Wow.
Spending time with the Lord in His Word and in prayer fuels your spirit and your creative output in any capacity: cooking, writing, painting, design, even how you dress, how you do your business, etc.
Yeah.
So I think like, how we steward our life spiritually, I think in our relationship with the Lord and our intimacy with Him and devotion to Him, is all this trickle-down effect into every portion of our life. And I think what we consume is what we'll put out.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately, like, if I'm taking care of myself spiritually, like how much greater is my output creatively going to be, and like how I'm honoring Him with it too.
Yeah, and that's a very important. Why we do what we do is a big aspect of it. Because if you said earlier, like trying to get famous and rich is stupid, and I agree.
Yeah.
If that's your motive, good luck. Like you're never gonna, or you might never say never, but why?
I'm all for it's like being successful.
Sure. But if your motive is to, I'm gonna write songs or I'm gonna do this so I could be a famous musician, it's like, okay, bro,
Yeah.
But I forgot who I was talking to about. Just when you humble yourself, the Lord exalts you.
Yeah.
In everything.
Totally.
And then to what you were saying was really good, because our spiritual lives, if we're not feeding ourselves, something from the Lord, then it's not going to output the same.
Yeah, I think
it's not.
Too, like my back end time in LA, I think like touching on this. But like my time in LA, like leaving was so bad.
Yeah.
Like long story short, like I had this amazing job.
Oh, I know about this.
Yeah. And got laid off like out of left field, couldn't find work for 9 to 10 months. Had like 44 job interviews. And they weren't just like applications. They were like legit interviews of some process. And it was at closed door after closed door, like 30 to 40 times.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that crushed me. I think just my mental health and my confidence, just like I was destroyed. I had no confidence at all. I feel like I couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Then I had to really make a tough decision because I wanted to stick it out, because I'm just like praying to God, like, okay, like what are you trying to do in this season of my life? You know what I mean? And like, I just got really angry and bitter towards the Lord for a season, because I'm just like, I'm going through this crap and it doesn't feel like it's ever going to end. And this was like 9 to 10 months of that.
That's a lot, man.
And I think like my creative output was negative. Like it wasn't even positive, like net positive.
Yeah.
And I think like moving back, making the tough decision to kind of like wrap everything up and just leave, and coming back, like I felt, and after I had time to kind of process everything I went through and my opportunities in LA and all this kind of stuff, it's like the Lord began to convict me and just kind of like revealed to me what He's trying to do in that season of my life on the back end. He's like, just basically like, when I moved, I was just praying to the Lord. I'm like, okay, like I want to do this. and like I want to glorify you in this space,
Yeah.
in this industry, like use me in this industry. And he gave me the open door into like one of the biggest streetwear brands that's been out for a long time. And got my foot in the door and just got elevated fairly quickly. And like he put me in that circumstance for me to like use me.
Yeah.
And I just completely fumbled it. And I just became so selfish.
Yeah.
And so like self-promoting. And it's like, okay, what's the next raise I can get? What can I do to make more money?
Yeah.
What can I do to make my life easier?
It's all you, huh?
And it's just a byproduct of living where I was living. 'Cause
Sure.
it's like, you're never comfortable because it's just like, it's just so expensive. Everything like, you're always just looking to climb that ladder. And I got so consumed with that and just became so selfish about just kind of like forwarding and pushing myself forward that I just missed so many opportunities to, I think, just share Jesus and glorify him in what I was doing. And like the Lord convicted me so tough on that. And I think like creatively, like God was really telling me to take a step back in creating. Because it's like you were doing this for so selfishly for so long.
Yeah.
Like you need to kind of like recenter yourself.
Like you weren't creating for him anymore.
No.
Yeah.
And I think like that was like a long process where I didn't make anything for like 8 months.
Wow.
And I think like I just kind of started to get that confidence and felt like that release to do that again.
Yeah.
And I think it just proves the point to where it's like, okay, like you need to steward your life spiritually in order to feed kind of whatever you're creating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll put it in a very simple form. It's like if you want to be a good athlete, but you're not feeding your body well,
Right.
you're never going to,
Perform.
Yeah, you're never going to do well. So be spiritual, guys.
Yeah.
Moral of the story, right? But no, yeah, it's just the creativity aspect of it. Our God's a creator, and we were all
so are we
created in His image. Yep. And there's what blows my mind is all these people. And my mom always told me this. I mean, my mom tells me this now. She's like, I find it hard to believe that, and she's not saying this to be rude. Nobody take this the wrong way. She loves me, and she'll say, I find it hard to believe that people write music and arrange for the world, and she's like, and you struggle with writing and arranging for God. And all it does is convict me because it's true. There's so much inspiration. There's so many really cool artists who write music for the world, who write music to get rich and famous, and their stuff hits. They probably have pacts with the devil. I don't know. Most of them. We won't get into that. But I think when we submit and when we seek the Lord, then the creativity it can't help but flow.
Sure.
When we have that, I admire John Williams a lot, and he's somebody who seeks God daily, all the time, and he's constant communication to the point where, the Lord the Holy Spirit downloads songs while he's in the kitchen, when he wrote Elijah, he was in the kitchen of his dorm. And I think when I said this when we talked about this is like when you're close to God, his voice is audible, but the farther away you are, the more dim it's going to sound, and you're just not going to hear what he wants to tell you. So it just comes with everything. And I really like that you've been creating a lot lately, and a lot of your stuff has been really good. So that just makes me realize that your relationship with the Lord is just that much better than what it was, a year ago?
Dude. It was like almost non-existent.
Well, when I met you, I remember it was pretty bad. That's why I thought you were a bad guy, because you weren't close to the Lord.
Dude, I was still depressed.
You did look a little angry, but you were with your homies too, so I get it. I wasn't a friend, but it's not the point.
Yeah.
That's, I guess, the emphasis of the episode and of our conversation is just finding that space and that time with God.
Yeah.
And the creativity will flow. I think our church is very creative based. Like, we have a lot of people across the board in all things creative who are just so good at these things. And my brother is into photography, and something I tell him, it's you just got to practice, take pictures, go drive somewhere and just take pictures.
Yeah.
So I tell him, and I think if we're...
Who cares if they suck? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, that's like go. I always tell them just literally find a place in Google, like Google a place that's cool, drive there, and just take pictures. Like it doesn't have to be.
You're doing more than other people.
It doesn't have to be nothing crazy. And I mean, he's been taking pictures for the church lately, and he's been killing it.
Great.
Yeah, he's been doing so much better, literally, than he was a year ago. And so, just to bring encouragement and a word of hope to our people, to our creative family, is just work at it. Seek the Lord, and that inspiration will overflow. And next thing you know, you're writing songs and you're writing melodies that you can bring to our church and designing stuff. Kyle has designed a bunch of stuff for youth, and you designed the merch last year for a conference for United Generation for UG Conference.
Yep.
And he designed the logo for UG Conference next year. So it's like, I know you don't do it for your stuff to be seen, but it's a big deal when you're designing a logo for a conference that the church puts on. I just think it's amazing. And, even it's all the behind the scenes stuff that nobody really notices. And as creatives, I'm not bitter about this. I'm just stating a fact that we don't always get a thank you.
No, totally. It can be very thankless.
Yeah, and then that's fine. Like I don't ever ask for a compliment. I tell this to people all the time. Do something and don't expect a compliment. But if you get one, receive it well.
It's also funny. I just think I had this thought the other day. It's like when people just don't realize what goes into creating stuff from nothing to something, in the sense I feel like people just approach it as
is that still recording now?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
I feel like people just approach things creatively. With me specifically, it's I'm like a magic genie. They can just rub the bottle and an idea will just pop out of thin air. No. And it's so much work goes into making the littlest thing sometimes. Yeah. And
by the way, are you making graphics for youth tonight?
No, there's no graphics.
No?
It's just a party thing.
Oh, that's right. Oh.
I don't even think
Jake's speaking. You're here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why you're free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just the little, so much effort can go into the littlest thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one little thing can take me a week to make. Sometimes, not all the time.
No.
But it's just ironic to how other people just perceive oh yeah, he can just make this really quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes I'm just hope this works. Hope they like this one.
Yeah. And look, people, sometimes if it's a favor, if it's a last minute thing, don't expect the best.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Right. And it's not because we don't want to give our best. It's just because
we don't have the time to.
We don't have the time to. Yeah. It's Kyle, can you make this graphic for me for when? For tomorrow. I'll see what I can do.
Right.
And then you give it to them and they're like, nah, I don't like this. It's I'm sorry.
It's even better an hour or two before.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's even better. But I mean, people like us.
No shade, no tea.
No, not at all. Seriously. The side eye. That's kidding. But we do it for the Lord. And I think when your heart is set on doing things for God, then it's do you want to do it? Sure, I'll do it, kind of a thing. And just the heart of a servant is what the Lord sees. And so if we're willing to serve our people and serve our church, then that's what matters. And so I think you're a person that really does reflect that a lot. And that's just being creative. That's just what it is. Totally. Sometimes it's unfortunate. Sometimes it hurts. Yeah. Sometimes it's oh man, I've never wished for people to thank me. Thank God. But sometimes it's I wish people would notice more what it is that I do for the Lord. But
sure,
it's
I feel that kind of defeats the purpose.
It totally defeats the purpose. I think the other day I did this on purpose and it was hilarious. We had staff chapel and someone forgot to bring out a mic for the person who was going to speak, and I was like, Gabe, did you grab a mic? He's like, no, I forgot. I said, oh, I'll grab it for you. So I went to the back and I grabbed the mic. I was playing drums, and so I went back real quick and I came back and I told Caleb Phillips, I said, oh, this is so church team me of me to think about, Gabe. But I did it on purpose because obviously that's not cool to do. And I was like, oh, this is so church team me of me to go and grab the mic right before I need a drum. Right. And Caleb goes in the talk back. He was like, it was very church team me of you until you talked about it. It's it was hilarious because I did it on purpose. It was a funny moment. So I'm not trying to be arrogant about it. Sure. It was just hilarious. But Yeah, bro. Thank you for being on the pod.
Dude, of course.
It was a good conversation.
So fun.
I feel like we have conversations all the time, but we're just during work. We don't just sit down and talk.
No.
But this was a good time, and
I don't want Dave to yell at me.
Huh?
I don't want Dave to yell at me for not working.
call you. Yeah.
Right.
But I appreciate your time, and I really pray that what we spoke about today is encouraging to somebody out there, a creative who is maybe you're going through it, maybe inspiration is not there, but seek the Lord and seek His word, and I think that's inspiration will start to flow from that. And, so that's it for episode 11. Thank you all for tuning in.
Yes.
Kyle, thank you again.
Of course.
We'll have Kyle again sometime. Do you want to talk about your brand?
Sure. Follow us at Lately Studios on Instagram.
Yes, sir. I'll put it in the bio of the video.
Yeah, it's a good time.
It's a good
Buy
time.
something from us whenever we put it out.
You got more merch coming out? Maybe
Soon.
soon.
Yeah.
All right. You still have hats?
No, they're also out.
They sold out.
Mhm.
Let's go.
Yeah. So
Cool. Anyways, be on the lookout for that. And yeah, thank you guys again. Don't forget to share, subscribe, give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, wherever you listen. And we'll see you next week. Peace out, everyone.
peace.